There was once many of my kind. The battlefields were glutted with the noble dead, and we feasted, and so thus we ascended. We haunted the woods, and humanity feared to venture under the canopy of branches, remaining at the edges and staying out of its deep darkness, casting fearful glances over their shoulders as they fled at dusk for the safety of their houses. It was right that they should fear. They were trespassers into our domain. I was one of the many in those ancient days. I do not remember my life before. I only remember when I became what I am now, of standing on the chest of a fallen king, with his blood staining the feathers of my breast and the muzzle of his heart to my beak. And I ate and ate, tearing the morsels free from between his ribs, and I felt my new claimed power in my blood and bones. I felt my awareness. I understood what I had once been, a brute beast of the air, and I understand what I am now. Thou Raven, they called us. There were many battlefields in those days, and there were many kings. Insignificant kings of tiny holdings, but proud and brave, and there were many ravens anxious to devour their hearts after the dying was done. So many of us, I remember it. We are greatly diminished. I persist, as do a handful of other ancients. Some of us perished as ravens, either by choice or at the hands of others. Those were the careless ones. We should not ever die, not with the power that we possessed. Some are raven no more, but have taken up human form by consuming the heart of an infant, freely given by immortal hands. There are very few new Valraven. War has changed. The battlefields are strewn with the dead, but it is a remote death, one that catches by surprise. Rarely do the dead see the eyes of those that slay them. And more, there are no kings among them. There are no noble dead. Those with power over others remain distant, watching from afar where there is no danger to their own person. They no longer die on the battlefield, and so we are denied of their hearts, denied the glory of their death, denied the power that allows us to rise with fury under our wings. I am weary of this. I long for the days of my birth. I am Valraven, Raven of the Slain. I gained the knowledge of humans, and I am wise for my many years on this earth. I have power of trickery and deceit, and there are few things on this earth that can contest it. I can go where I wish. I can bid doors to open for me. I can deceive the human mind into doing what I ask of it. I can coerce. I can demand. I cannot be stopped. It is so easy to manipulate humanity, so easy to take what I want. Look at the person transcribing this, so confident in their protections, so certain that they were above the common masses that exist to be preyed upon. Not reduced to a mewling wretch, cringing before me and begging for their life. I may yet kill them once their task is done and my words have been recorded. I have not yet decided. Their desperate terror amuses me. For so long I have been content sating my desires in this manner. Those of my kind that took up human form did so that they might have access to the things they wanted in human society. I never felt a need. Easy enough to call to someone and tell them what they must do for me. However, I feel that this will no longer suffice if I am to accomplish my aims. It is time for me to abandon the skies. Already, I mourn for what I will lose. The feel of the wind, the world distant below me. The struggles and toils of mortal kind diminished into insignificance beneath my gaze. I do not make this decision lightly. I seek an infant. It must be given to me alive and whole, so that I can tear it open and drink the blood of its heart. I will become a human, strong and beautiful and powerful, and all that hear me will obey my words just as they obey me now. I will not be denied, yet already one has tried to defy me. I made a bargain with a woman. She was young and lonely, far from home on a college campus. I watched her for many weeks as she walked between the buildings, going from class to class. I saw her in the evenings. After class ended and she walked aimlessly, looking at the trees, hopelessly alone and drifting like a leaf through a world that she no longer recognized. I would follow her on these walks until one day, she noticed my presence. I stood on a concrete wall, intently watching as she passed by so that she could not help but notice. She stopped to marvel at this, a raven that felt no fear of humans, although she assumed me to be a crow at the time and I never corrected her mistake. It was as if we were the only two beings in the college courtyard. So still she was as she gazed upon me, and in a way we were, for I had cloaked us in illusion so that no classmate could interrupt our first meeting. She had crackers in her backpack. She offered one to me and I pecked at it because it was what she had expected, laughing in my heart at her unwitting audacity, offering me, who has eaten the flesh of kings, a peanut butter cracker. She gave me crackers the next day and the day after that. I became her crow, and she spoke to me as we both sat there on the ledge. Told me about her classes and how she had nothing in common with a roommate, or with anybody really. And I picked at the crackers that she crumbled for me, and I waited, and then one day, I answered her. Her hands went still in her lap. She stared straight ahead, her cheeks pale, and then she dropped the rest of the crackers onto the ledge, standing hurriedly and brushing off the crumbs. She walked away in silence, shoulders hunched, head ducked, and she did not look back. I waited. The next day she came to me, as I knew she would, and she sat beside me, and when she spoke, her words were soft and frightened. "You can't actually talk, can you?" she whispered. "I can." A long silence between us. "I must be imagining this," she continued. "Ask of me something that no bird would do," I replied. "I will prove that I understand you." She asked if I would bring her some chips from the nearby vending machine. She put a stack of quarters beside us and I quietly cursed her, for I did not dare use overt displays of my power just yet, not until she trusted me. I was forced to pick them up in my beak one by one, and fly over to the machine and force them into the slots while clinging to the side of its frame with my claws. I, that have eaten the noble dead, performing tricks for a mortal girl. Take this as a mark of my conviction. I will humiliate myself to achieve my goal. She shared the chips with me when I returned, carrying them in my beak. After that, I became her sole friend, the one that listened, the one that she could share her secrets with. I confess that her further isolation was my aim. She trusted me, she depended on me, and finally the day came when she needed me. Her father, she said, he had had a heart attack, and they were going to operate within a few hours. She had no car and there wasn't time for her mother to drive all the way to her little college town to pick her up. She had spoken to him on the phone, but that wasn't enough. She wanted to be there to tell him that she loved him, in case that he didn't come out of surgery. To be there for her mother. She told me all of this in the tiny concrete courtyard of the dormitory, crying into her hands. "I can take you to him," I said, "but you must give me something in return." She hesitated. Yet, what is there to fear? I was her friend, her only friend. And so she agreed, saying that whatever I wanted, she would give to me. That was what I was waiting for. I was never her friend. I am made of deceit and lies, and she, desperately alone, was easy prey. I want your firstborn child. Her expression shifted. Her eyes widened and she began to tremble like an autumn leaf clinging to a twig against the winter winds. She asked me to repeat myself as if perhaps she had simply misheard. But then when I confirmed what it was that I wanted, she grew quiet and still. She said nothing, and I felt her despair. I felt it twist inside of her, turn to anger and then to hate. It was too late. The bargain was made. I bit her to sleep so that she wouldn't panic, and then I took on my monstrous form, seized her in my claws and carried her aloft into the sky. It was a deal after all. And when she awoke, she was in the parking lot of the hospital, and I perched on a nearby car. She was disoriented. She turned in a circle, her eyes finally focusing on the hospital sign, and finally she understood what had happened. And then she looked at me one last time, turned her back and walked away. And I knew that she would curse me, and this world that she had constructed in her head would begin to fall apart in bits and pieces until she realized that she was alone and had always been alone. I didn't care. The offer was made and I had named what I wanted. I would return someday for her firstborn. It took many years for her to trust somebody enough to marry, and then for them to want to start a family. I came to her as she painted the walls of the nursery, bidding the window open and flying inside. "Why do you waste your time with such a meaningless task?" I asked her, perched on the rail of the crib. "Your child will never sleep in this bed." And she fell to the floor, covering her stomach with her arms and weeping. She had cursed me, said that the bargain was unfairly made, that I couldn't take her child, and that it wasn't mine to have. Her words were hollow. I left laughing, knowing that she couldn't deceive herself forever. She told her husband about me and the promise that she had made, and he came out to the yard, to the maple tree where I perched in the branches, and he called to me by the name of my kind. I flew down to him and we spoke. I told him of our bargain, the woman and I, and he listened, with the severity of someone that believes their senses and will not deny what they hear or see, no matter how desperately they want it to be false. I believe that this was my mistake. I am not infallible. Sometimes the hearts of humans can surprise me. The baby never returned from the hospital. I watched them arrive in the car and they got out, he sheltering his wife under one arm, and they had nobody else with them. I waited. Once she was inside, he came out to me once more and I flew down to him, and I demanded to know where the child was. Did it die? A rare occurrence in this age. We gave it up for adoption. He replied with no small measure of defiance. The records are sealed. Good luck finding it, you monster. He spat the word and I said nothing, and he, flushed with victory, walked a few paces before picking up a rock. He flew it at me and I took to the air, screaming my anger. I saw the bitter, hateful triumph in his eyes, the spite. The child was no longer theirs, but it was alive, and that was victory enough for them. Perhaps I could have found it. Perhaps I could have stolen it away myself, or coerced a human to perform the theft and bring it to me. This is not freely given, however. It would be a tasty meal, but nothing more. I would have to find another. I would not grant the woman her victory, however, not without a price. Her arrogant husband would be the instrument of my revenge. I wanted him to suffer for the rock that he threw. Some days later, I bid the kitchen window to open and I perched there on the windowsill. He did not see me because I did not wish him to. He stood at the counter making a sandwich for his wife. I called out to him, and he heard my voice as the sound of glass breaking, of his wife's terrified scream, of her calling to him, begging him to come save her. And he grabbed a knife and ran from the kitchen. I followed, flying through the room to land in the entryway of the living room, where his wife stood, pale and frightened. His wife's terrified screams were the only thing I did not alter in his mind. I let her shriek as the knife pierced her body, and he heard it as if it came from somewhere else, as if she were huddled in another part of the room, and he was saving her from the intruder that he saw in his mind's eye. The broken glass on the floor, the stranger with a gun, all an illusion. Humans are so easy to deceive, and I let him kill her with his own hands. I do not regret her death. She denied me what I desired, and her husband had the audacity to insult me. The moment when I let the illusion slip and he realized what he had done was delicious. The dawning horror in his eyes, the way that bloody knife slipped from his hands, how he crumpled beside her body, hands trembling, afraid to touch her, not wanting to believe what he was seeing. The way his breathing quickened as he teetered on the edge of hysteria. I sat there in the ruins of his life, arms dangling limp at his side. I came to him, laughing, mocking, so that he knew it was I that had caused this. He struggled to his feet, crying out in anger, and he rushed at me with hands outstretched. I think he intended to strangle me. I spread my wings and I flapped them once, and he was thrown back, landing heavily on his back, and he could not rise again, pinned under the weight of my will. Could not stand, could not raise his arms, could not even move his head when I landed on his brow and I ripped his eyes out with my beak. The police found him curled on the floor, screaming, covering his face with his palms as blood leaked between his fingers, and fell onto the floor to mingle with that of his wife. I stood on the windowsill and screamed my laughter until one of the officers shooed me away and slammed the window shut. I didn't mind. I was done there. My cries were burned into the man's mind, and he would remember them until the end of his days. There are others that I have made bargains with. There are plenty that I have deceived, telling themselves that I would never come to collect, or that when I do, they cannot whip me. Perhaps some will find a way and I will ruin them as I ruined the first. Consider this a warning, should I come to you with an offer. I take my vengeance in full, and your defiance is meaningless. There will always be others and I am patient. It is only a matter of time before I succeed. I will be given an infant, I will consume their heart, and I will rise with human hands and unhuman feet, and I will weep the wings that I have lost. But when the grieving is done, I will turn all my intellect and all my power to my new task. I will usher in war. It will be such a war, it will cover the globe, and all will taste of the grave, and death will reap from all classes of humankind, the low and the high, and there will be leaders of men among the dead. It will be such a war, the likes of which has never been seen and will likely never occur again. And we ravens will glut ourselves once more upon the bodies of the slain. Grow strong, readers of my words. Become leaders, enact your will upon your brethren. And when you are kings and when the war comes, die in glory, knowing that you will offer up your hearts to something greater than yourselves. A noble fate for those that are born with a destiny to die, fated to feed the carrion birds. We will feed. We will rise as Valraven. Our wings will blacken the skies and our power will cover the earth, and we will hold dominion over the heavens. I will release my pawn. They have served me well in writing down what I have to say. Look for me. My time to walk among you is near.